need to get this. Right. It's just a bit slow, Prabhu, sorry. Sit between you and John. So,
Right there, you can.
oh yeah. I mean, I like to do that if we have the verse, but yeah.
There's a version of your phone.
Okay, we are live and you may begin.
Okay. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
One of our roommates is also just left the room for 1 second, but we'll be right back. But anyways,
Okay.
please get going.
Okay, kick it off. So we'll start with a little Jai Radha Madhava, beautiful song and meditation on divinity in a mood of loving service. So let me share my screen, pull it up quick. Oh, I'm not able to share my screen right now. Okay, let's see. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Janavalabha Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Nandana Braja Janaran Jamunatira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai, okay, here we go. We're reading from the beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam. This is, oh, I think I might have lost it. I think I deleted the wrong tab. Let me pull it up, but it's Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 9. So we're at the outset of an incredible epic story, all centered around how to develop love, love for divinity and love for humanity, pure love, awaken that love within our hearts that is naturally there. So I'll just read through the verse and the word for words. You guys can follow along, and then we'll dive right in. Tatra tatra gisaya yushman bhavata yad vinishchitam pamsam ekanta shreyas tannasam sitamarhasi. Word for word, tatra, thereof. Tatra, thereof. Agyasa, made easy. Ayushman, blessed with a long duration of life. Bhavata, by your good self. Yat, whatever. Vinishchitam, ascertained. Pungsam, for the people in general. Ekantaha, absolutely. Shreya, ultimate good. Tat, that. Na, to us. Samshitam, to explain. Arhasi, deserve. Translation, please therefore, being blessed with many years, explain to us in an easily understandable way what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, worship of the Acharya is recommended. So Acharyas here is referring to a guru or a great teacher, someone who has imbibed the principles of spiritual life in a genuine and authentic way. But saying in the Bhagavad Gita, worship of the Acharya is recommended. The Acharyas and Goswamis are always absorbed in thought of the well-being of the general public, especially their spiritual well-being. Spiritual well-being is automatically followed by material well-being. The Acharyas therefore give directions in spiritual well-being for people in general, foreseeing the incompetencies of the people in this age of Kali, or the iron age of quarrel. The sages requested that Sutta Goswami give a summary of all revealed scriptures, because the people of this age are condemned in every respect. The sages therefore inquired of the absolute good, which is the ultimate good for the people. The condemned state of affairs of the people of this age is described as follows. Om Jnana Timanandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So just want to introduce myself real quick too, for those who don't know me. My name is Anupam, and I'm a very dear godbrother here. Natabar Brindavan Natabar invited me to come speak, and I'm honored to be able to be of service. A brief background of myself. So I was always into spirituality, meditation, philosophy, um, and I kind of came to the conclusion at a young age that if I wanted to really realize my full potential, then I need to become self-realized. Otherwise, I could go to college, I could spend, tens of thousands of dollars on some degree, but if I don't know who I am, and how can I know what I'm actually supposed to study or what to speak of do with my life? And so I decided after high school, as soon as I graduated, I would go to India and I would try to become enlightened, because I figured if I could attain that state of realization of higher consciousness, then I would be effective in the world. And in my search there, I ultimately became fully satisfied by the teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam, especially as they're presented by Srila Prabhupada here. And that is exactly what's being spoken of here, that when somebody is actually qualified, then we can feel free to completely absorb ourselves in them, in their words, in their instructions, in their activities, everything about them, because they've attained a certain level of spiritual realization. They're no longer operating on the same platform as everybody else, but they have removed the covering that is preventing them, or preventing all of us, from realizing our full potential, and therefore are able to act as a transparent via medium through which the pure wisdom and love and realization of the spiritual realm can be passed through into this material realm. So that is one of the most important points that's emphasized throughout all of the bhakti texts, is the point of finding a bona fide teacher, someone whom we can fully trust, can put our faith in fully. In fact, all of the bhakti teachings are condensed into just a few verses in a very beautiful sacred text called the Upadeshamrita by Srila Rupa Goswami, a great saint in our line. And in the very first verse of that text, he says, Vacho vegam manasakroda vegam jivan vegam udaropasta vegam etan vegam yo vishaheta dhira sarvam api mam prativimsasisha. He says that if you really want to make advancement in spiritual life, Step one is to find that person to whom you can fully surrender, whom you can fully trust. And the qualities of that person are very clear. Ultimately, it's somebody who has completely controlled their lower self in favor of their higher self. Instead of being dictated by the senses, by the everlasting, ever increasing waves of material desires that are constantly flooding us here in the material world, they have risen above that and are instead operating from a space of pure love. Instead of thinking of themselves and what will gratify their senses and gratify their ego, they are fully absorbed in a mood of loving service. So the beautiful thing about that, I'll say, is that it's not some external imposition. It's not that these people have changed themselves necessarily, but they've awakened to their true nature. Later on in this text, we'll hear one of the most beautiful verses, one that completely struck me and cracked me open when I first heard it, because I felt like it so deeply resonated with everything that I was searching for. Where it says, Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir dokshaje, ahoitikia pratiyata yayatma suprasidati. That the supreme occupation or the supreme religion for all humanity is not Hinduism or Jainism or Buddhism or Christianity, but it's that ism or that lifestyle through which we can awaken to our true, eternal, transcendental nature, which is simply to love and to be loved in return. Such a beautiful thing. Nat King Cole sang, "The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return." And it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because all of the movies, the TV shows, the just thinking of anyway, the books, they're all about love. They all have some degree of a loving interest. One of the most popular TV shows right now that just made me laugh, my sisters watch, is called Love Island. Maybe you guys have heard of it. I hope not, but I certainly have. But in any case, it's all about finding love, right? Of course, for the most part there, what we're seeing is maybe a better name would be Lust Island, because we see a lot of hopping around and whoever's going to satisfy my senses, whoever I think looks the best, whoever has the most charisma is going to, sweep me off my feet and I'll fall in love with them until I get tired of them and then I'll go to someone else on the island. Um, but what's being said in that verse is that no, real love, that's the nature of the soul. And what is the nature of that real love? Ahoitakia pratiyata. There's no interruption to it, regardless of whether the object of our love is exactly as we'd expect them to be, or if they change up on us in some way, if they, as it said later on, if they handle us roughly by their embrace, if maybe they mistreat us in some way. Still, regardless, my love is never ending. It's always overflowing in abundance. There's no impediment. There's nothing that could ever stop it. And part of the reason why is because it's also free from any tinges of selfish motive. Regardless of how you treat me or regardless of any external circumstance, my love for you is never ending, ever increasing. It could never be stopped. So the Acharya, as it's being mentioned here, is somebody who is overflooded with that pure love, who has tapped into their original nature and is living in that and is spreading that all over the world. So what that looks like practically is they're no longer influenced by the lower nature. Why? Because they could see that any degree of selfishness ultimately leads to suffering. And also, it's not really desirable. Doesn't really have any juice in it. It the quality of any kind of selfish act, either subtle or gross, is so low, it's so base compared to this pure eternal love that's being spoken of here and that the acharyas have imbibed. Just like we look at um, we see maybe a dog walking down the sidewalk, especially if you're in New York City or New York City area like I am, and there may be some dead mouse or dead bird on the street, and the dog looks and thinks, "Yummy, this is delicious." And he goes and he starts picking at it because the dog's a scavenger. And so to him, that's very enjoyable, a dead animal on the side of the street. But for us, we look at it and think that's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's disease riddled. It is putrid, smells bad, tastes bad. Everything about it is nasty. But we prefer something like a nice bowl of ice cream, say maybe a strawberry cheesecake or something like that. So in the same way, eventually, once we come to a higher level of consciousness, right? The dog is considered to be in a lower level of consciousness. So once we evolve even past the human level and get to the spiritual level of consciousness, then we see any act of selfishness, anything that we take for our own personal gratification as very low, very base, ultimately gross, disease riddled. It leads to degradation. It leads to dissatisfaction. It leads to disease, leads to suffering. And we see acts of selflessness, acts of sacrifice out of love for the sake of our beloved as the highest thing. We see those things as actually enjoyable, as actually beautiful, as actually satisfying to the soul. And they are. So the Acharya is being described here as somebody who has realized that. And so they're no longer manipulated by any kind of lower propensities or lower desires, not because they have developed this staunch, discipline and they, have conquered, over their lower self, but no, because they're in love. They're in love with Krishna. They're in love with divinity. And what they're tasting in that mode of love is so beautiful and so overwhelmingly sweet that everything else just seems silly. It seems valueless, like there's nothing really that it has to offer. So this is the caliber of person that we're instructed to look for. Prabhupada's saying here, the acharyas therefore give directions and spiritual well-being for people in general. Foreseeing the incompetencies of the people in this age of Kali or the Iron Age of Quarrel, the sages requested Sutta Goswami to give a summary of all revealed scriptures because the people of this age are condemned in every respect. So what does that mean? Prabhupada's not saying that people are inherently condemned, right? Because we know that we're all pure spirit souls. But because of the thrust of the Kali Yuga or the modern age being towards materialism, being towards lower levels of consciousness, people are in illusion, thinking that those dead birds and mice on the street are tasty. They're thinking that those things will bring them satisfaction, will bring them nourishment. And so it's worth pointing out that that doesn't mean that they are eternally condemned, but it is a temporary covering because of the fact that they are misled by the media, by so-called teachers, by oftentimes parents who don't know any better. They find themselves in a situation that is unfortunate, where they're seeing things that are actually valueless as being very valuable, right? So many times we see that people in this world will spend their entire lives climbing up a ladder, ultimately to realize that it was up against the wrong wall. They were climbing a ladder to absolutely nowhere. They were working hard, going to school, sacrificing so much, sacrificing time with friends, time with family, so much money, trying to accomplish something that ultimately leaves them feeling even more dissatisfied than they were before. So it's a massive fake out. And I remember back when I was in college, I was taking a business class. It was a business college. And I remember one of the icebreakers the teacher used was, something like, what's the goal of your life? Or like, what do you hope to achieve in this life? And we read around and there were maybe 30 students or so in the class. And just about every single one of them said the same exact thing, which was to be successful, to be successful. What does that mean, though, to be successful? For most people, I can't speak for all of them, but what I would assume for most people, if you really break it down to the nuts and bolts, it means to have an above average car, right? An above average house, an above average looking spouse, an above average salary where you can feel like you've made it. You're not just one of the general populace, but you've actually ascended to a higher level. And they're thinking that that'll bring them happiness. But I could tell you from personal experience, having grown up around wealthy people, um, that actually the suffering and the anxiety that is experienced at that level of success is I would say even more intense than somebody who's just living a simple lifestyle, but is focused on things like family and leaving a good example behind them. I could say that for myself, the times in which I've felt the most satisfied and the most happy aren't the times where I've taken for myself, but when I've sacrificed for others. And that's corroborated in this very text, where it says, Nayam deho deha bhajamni loke kastanka manarhita vid bhujamye tapo divyam puchika yena shatvam shudyad yasmad brahmasaukyam tunantam. Lord Rishabdeva, who we'll meet later on, maybe in a year or two or so. He gives these wonderful, ecstatic, and also very intense instructions to his sons, where he says, My dear boys, one who's accepted this human form of life should not labor hard day and night simply for sense gratification. After all, that's available even to animals in the lower species, right? For us, sense gratification means a big house, a nice car, whatever. But that same feeling of superiority is attained even by the monkeys who are trying to get on a higher branch and claim the female, and be known as the king of the monkeys or whatever. So just one who's accepted a human form of life where there's already a higher grade of consciousness shouldn't waste their time working hard day and night simply for this phantasmagoria, this kind of fantasy, this kind of sensation, this kind of egoistic sensation of having more than other people. Instead, one should engage in tapo divyam, or divine austerity. One should sacrifice immediate gratification, immediate ego boosts, immediate pleasures for the sake of a higher cause. In that way, it's described, you get not just some temporary fleeting pleasure that goes away pretty quickly, but you get Brahmasaukyam, which means divine, eternal, everlasting, ever increasing pleasure. You actually tap into the soul by this act. And we shouldn't think that these acts of sacrifice are, again, some kind of staunch, disciplined, um, you know, something you'd see like on a battlefield. But no, what is love actually? Love actually is sacrifice. Love is nothing but sacrifice. When the mother is taking care of her little child, what does that actually look like? How does that love manifest? It manifests in her waking up at 2 a.m., waking up throughout the night, sacrificing her sleep, her desires, her pleasure for the sake of her child. And that love that's there between the mother and the child is considered closest to the love that's there in the soul for divinity or for Krishna. So this is what actually satisfies the soul. This is what actually satisfies the soul. But what's being said here in the purport is, unfortunately, people in Kali Yuga are misled to believe that satisfaction will come from selfishness, will come from taking for oneself. It's a very base level of understanding. It's something that has come about over time, right? In that if you look at who was glorified in times past, even in, 100, 200, 300 years ago, it wasn't, movie stars or musicians who are advocating for just gross sense gratification and taking for oneself and taking, more than everybody else, taking from others, and just enjoying being gluttonous. That's kind of where we're at right now. But in days past, who was glorified? The saints. People had pictures of saints in their house instead of Jimi Hendrix, or nowadays, I guess maybe Ariana Grande or something like that. No, they were glorifying saints or even, heroes, people who died on the battlefield fighting for what they believed in. But as a result of Kali Yuga, this age in which subtlety is decaying, in which the glory of values like tolerance, humility, sacrifice are all um, it's all decaying. It's all becoming less and less advertised. People are becoming more and more misled into believing that gross sense gratification brings happiness, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It's a total fake out. It leads to so much more anxiety, so much more dissatisfaction. There's no end to it. The senses, the ego, they will go on forever searching for something and never really getting it. Never really getting it. And why? Because in reality, we as spirit souls, we never really even come into contact with this material world in a sense. If you've ever had the experience of obtaining something you were longing for, or finally getting, the girl or the money or the position or whatever, as soon as we get it, that feeling that we thought we would get from it, it feels like we could never fully grasp it. And maybe when we first achieve it, we get some sense of excitement. There's some sensory, um, sensation there. There's some pleasure, but it never really stays. It's there for a time, we get it, and then it becomes something else that we need to chase after. And this way, we're like the donkey chasing the carrot. We're always searching, trying to find it, going, 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 but we'd never really get that satisfaction for which we're looking for. And why is that? Because again, we're spirit souls. We could never get full satisfaction from something material. Just like the fish, you take him out of the water where he belongs, where he can actually get nourishment, and you put him on the beach. It doesn't matter if he has a massive, sand house and a sand Lamborghini and a very attractive sand wife or husband, or whatever it might be. It's just going to get in his gills and it gives him some sensation, but it just feels bad ultimately over time. It causes anxiety. Why? Because he's in an incompatible situation. He doesn't belong on the sand. He belongs in the water where he can feel nourished. So in the same way, because we are ourselves aquatics, we belong in the beautiful ocean of love of God, love for Krishna. So no matter how many sand articles, how many sand dollars we accumulate here, it could never really satisfy us. It's not where we belong. The material nature is categorically different from the spiritual nature. So no matter how we try to manipulate it in any kind of way, it'll ultimately just agitate us. We'll get some sensation for some time, but it could never truly satisfy. So the Acharya is somebody who directs us back towards the ocean, who says, "Hey, look, you're not a land animal. You actually belong in the water. That's where you'll feel satisfied." And they engage us in activities, beautiful activities that may appear to be difficult at first, sitting down, chanting rounds, reading, every day, giving Krishna consciousness, spiritual life to others. It can sometimes feel arduous, but that sacrifice, that tapo divyam, that austerity is a divine one. And by that austerity, then we develop our true transcendental nature. We awaken that love in the heart that's naturally there. And we ultimately become fully satiated, fully satisfied. We finally flip-flop our way from the hot sands of the beach back into the beautiful, nourishing, abundant ocean of love for God. So therefore, Prabhupada's saying here, the sages inquired of the absolute good. They're seeing that everybody is flapping around on the beach, trying to rub sand in their gills for satisfaction, but they're just killing themselves, basically. There's no real love there. There's no real satisfaction there. So therefore, they're inquiring of the absolute good, which is the ultimate good for all the people, all the sad little fish flopping around, don't know which way to go. And then, as we'll see in the verse tomorrow, the condemned state of affairs of these poor little guppies will be described more and more. So I went a little over time. I was hoping to leave a little more time for reflections or questions. But I believe we to end at 9:50, right? Not about Vrindavan, not
Yeah,
about.
it's okay to go a little over too.
Okay.
Um, I have a question. Um, so you you referenced the Shikshastakam earlier, the eighth verse of the Shikshastakam. Uh, Let Krishna trample or go away from me, or play like a man who cheats on his wife. Still only Krishna remains my life. So I'm just wondering, like, basically, I see people all the time that have been practicing Krishna consciousness for 30, 40, even 50 years. And I see how they take difficulties. And honestly, like some of them still take them really hard.
Mm,
And it's it's a little discouraging to me. Like it's kind of like, if you're about to buy like a car or something like that, and you see someone that has like a 20-year-old version of that same car, they've had to just like send it to the shop a bunch of times, and they're
yeah.
constantly having to do maintenance on it. It's kind of like, oh boy, like I don't know if I want this car.
Yeah.
So I'm early in my devotional life. I have been chanting Hare Krishna for, I can count the number of years I've been chanting Hare Krishna on my hands. Um, I mean, how can I make sure that I don't just get stuck and frustrated over and over, even after chanting for decades?
It's a great point. Yeah, it's something that I'd also wondered for a long time. And one Prabhupada disciple, one very honest Prabhupada disciple said to me one time when I was talking to him, he said, my biggest realization about Krishna consciousness after 50 years of practicing it is that you get out what you put into it. And so Krishna corroborates that also in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says that yeah, there are many people who may come to me, who may come to this path, but ultimately very, very few actually know me in truth. Very, very few. And so if we really want to experience prema for Krishna, we have to go for it. We have to go for it. We have to really adjust our lifestyle in such a way where we can make a big push. But that doesn't necessarily mean, going out and distributing thousands and thousands of books or, you know, being like Ayendra Prabhu and going and doing kirtan 24-hour, starting some massive thing. But what Gurudev says always is it's about really mastering the basics. This one time we were in a VDA Productions meeting, so it's you probably know it, Brindavanadabar, but it's the group that meets to help develop Vaisheshika Prabhu's book projects. And there was another icebreaker. I guess it's the icebreaker class today. But the icebreaker was if you were writing an autobiography, what would be the title of it? And so we all went around and we were saying like these kind of like, esoteric, or maybe just uh, you know, silly things, like the mercy case, and mine will be, the cause us mercy, or just like humble things like that. And then it got to Gurudev, and he said his would be called Rice Dal Chapatis, a life lived in trying to master the basics. And that was really profound, for us. For me especially, I could say that it's easy to get sidetracked in Krishna consciousness and start thinking, I want to do that, I want to do this, I want to do this, maybe I should try to get this or get that position, but if we really lean into chanting Hare Krishna and hearing Prabhupada's books, especially the pastimes of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, we really absorb ourselves in that, make that our thing, then we'll make really good progress. How many people can you say you've noticed really sit down every morning and try to chant 16 really good rounds or even 10 really good rounds, where they're really trying to absorb themselves in the name, not necessarily doing it, but Guru Maharaj said also, just trying to absorb yourself in the holy name sincerely is namabas, where, you will develop into that Shuddhanam. So ultimately, I think there's a tendency for Krishna consciousness, after that initial thrust of enthusiasm that we all get, to become a sort of cultural thing where, we dress up and we, we're vegetarian, we follow the regular principles, so on and so forth. But are we really digging deep and trying to absorb ourselves in the holy name every day? So few people actually. And are we really trying to hear Prabhupada's books in a deep and systematic way? So few people. But Gurudev is the emblem of that. And there are others as well. But like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, it's very rare, actually. So most people, it takes lifetimes, it takes time, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we want fast results, then we have to apply ourselves accordingly. And then they'll come. They'll come. We will have experiences that vindicate or validate our practice. Krishna will make it undeniable that this is effective, but we have to lean into the essential practices like hearing and chanting.
Thank you for that. It reminds me of a couple of things I heard recently from His Grace Kalakanta Prabhu. The first thing was the memory of someone speaking to Srila Prabhupada and saying, Srila Prabhupada, I thought you said Krishna consciousness is easy. And he says, I never said it was easy. I said it was simple.
Mm,
So it may be hard to do these simple things well over and over again, but um, but it's simple. Yeah, the basics, right? And
yeah.
the other thing I thought of, which he said recently, is I would like to be remembered as the guru whose disciples wake up early. So, it's like what a simple thing, right? But like again, it's just like those little, yeah, those things. Sometimes people even say like, oh, that's okay, like what, whatever, it's all immaterial, just the love in your heart. But really that is Prabhupada's, like, it's Prabhupada's program. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Master those basics, and there's so many other little things we could do if we really want Krishna prema in this lifetime, like being very strict with how we eat. Gurudev is very careful about that and avoiding
mm,
eating out at restaurants and things that are, especially grains that are cooked by outsiders, stuff. So, how many devotees are following that? You know, Almost nobody. Almost no. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot. I mean, America definitely less so. But it's one of those things that, yeah, you'll look back at your life after you've practiced for 50 years, And you'll think, well, maybe if I did that instead, maybe if I was a little bit more strict with this, then, but if we do that now as young devotees and we're really serious, then we'll have a very different trajectory than everybody else naturally. Yayatamam prapadyante. Krishna will reward us according to how we approach him. So if we're very serious and we really are sincere and we make that effort according to the process that Vaisheshika Prabhu, Kalakanta Prabhu, they're all emphasizing, then the results will come, no doubt. But if we're lax and we kind of hang out and we're a cultural devotee, we have some pizza here from Gino's down the street, and we just kind of go through our rounds, and just kind of go through the motions, then yeah, maybe you'll stay a devotee, hopefully, but advancement, you might look back and think, how come I'm not tasting anything in my japa? How come when I read I don't feel the love? But that's why.
Thank
So
you, Prabhu. Any discussion?
I just wanted to say hi. I'm Jagannath Chaitanya Das, and I enjoyed the class. Thank you for giving the class. Very sweet, beautiful themes, and we're really grateful that you're here doing this for us. Thank you.
thank you both. Yeah, you guys are doing great work down there. I can't wait to see all the success.
Yeah, and Bhakta Joshua is off camera, but we were three in your audience this morning. Thank you so much, Prabhu. I'll end the stream.